Dr. Kenneth KK Kaunda. We're now joined by former President of South Africa, Thabo Mbeki. Mr. President, thank you very much indeed for joining us. And we begin with condolences, because I know that for someone who was with the ANC in exile, spent many years in Zambia, this is a great loss to you too.
Thanks, Peter. Yes, indeed, it is. Zambia, Peter, as you know, to many of us, Zambia is a second home. Because for over 20 years, that was our headquarters. Zambia hosted the ANC headquarters. President Kaunda hosted the ANC headquarters. So we were very, very close to Oliver Tambo, worked very, very closely with Oliver Tambo in terms of our struggle. You recall that at a certain stage, Zambia had to host liberation movements throughout the region, because there was a liberation war on its western borders in Angola, liberation war on its southern borders in Zimbabwe, liberation war on its eastern borders in Mozambique, and then us and SWAPO, all of us in Zambia. And President Kaunda and the Zambian people and UNIP, the governing party, took a very, very firm position that independent Zambia had a responsibility to help achieve this African objective of the total liberation of the continent from colonialism and apartheid. It's very, very close to us, and President Kaunda, we count him as one of the architects of a democratic South Africa.
How will you remember him? Let's start as a politician, as a statesman, and then perhaps as a person.
Well, as a politician and a statesman, let me talk in relation to our struggle. Zambia, President Kaunda really had this task of the total liberation of our continent in his heart. It was part of his agenda. It was not a by the way thing, something that I can attend to tomorrow. And the support for the liberation movement, support for the ANC was very critical. I can tell you, for instance, Peter, that at some point, one of us, a member of the ANC, got involved with drug dealers. And they warned us, the police, Zambia police, they said, look, we're going to arrest the Zambians who are dealing with drugs, and we're going to arrest this member of the ANC who's working with them. But we don't want embarrassment for the ANC. Therefore, just take this member of yours out of Zambia quickly so that by the time we look for him, we won't find him. Because we must avoid embarrassing the ANC in any way. I'm saying that demonstrated this very intimate connection that President Kaunda and the Zambians felt towards the ANC, towards the struggle. And therefore for us, this is a very, very sad day indeed, that we lose somebody so critically important to us, somebody who really was an architect of our democracy.
And it wasn't just housing the ANC in exile, but also in the actual journey towards democracy. One remembers the meetings with the likes of Pigwater, etc.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, President Kaunda also had his own views that the matter of the injustice of apartheid was so obvious that perhaps if he engaged himself personally, engaged directly with people like P.W. Botha, with Peg Botha and so on, to show them the incorrectness and the injustice of their positions, particularly since they were claiming to be Christians. Because President Kaunda, you couldn't doubt it, a very devout Christian, he could engage them, maybe he would be able to convince them. Of course, we did not agree with him that would produce the result he expected. But we respected the fact that he was intervening, not in order to betray the struggle, but to help us to achieve this objective of our liberation, with minimum loss of life and as quickly as possible.
And his hand and his work spread beyond just the Southern African part of the continent. He was a Pan-Africanist in the truest sense of the word, wasn't he?
Oh, absolutely, yes. I mean, the President Kaunda, like President Nyerere, these people were respected, these leaders were respected throughout the continent. Because in the positions they took, the stance they assumed practically, to say that we are ready to suffer, we are ready to sacrifice. Because the entire continent, you remember what Kwame Nkrumah had said, that the independence of Ghana would be meaningless without the liberation of the rest of Africa. That became an African slogan, and President Kaunda therefore said, we have a contribution to make to the achievement of that Pan-African objective. And hence the support for our struggle and support for the struggles in the region, very unwavering, very committed, ready to pay, as I was saying, to pay any price, because this African objective had to be achieved. And therefore stood out throughout Africa. Wherever you went, Africans would stand up in ovation of President Kaunda on our continent.
Many describe him as having a great presence, charm, and an ability to do the job of politics. Did that make it easy for him to have sometimes honest and frank conversations with the leadership on the continent?
Oh, yes. I mean, President Kaunda was, in that sense, a people's person. A people's leader, very easy to communicate. It's partly because he had a very good heart as a human being. You know, there's at one point, Peter, the Zambian police arrested a New Zealand mercenary. New Zealand mercenary who had come to Lusaka. His task was to put a bomb underneath the car I was using so that I start the car and then get blown up. But fortunately, he got arrested by the police, charged, sentenced, but he was a New Zealander. And I can't remember how many years to which he was convicted, but he served a couple of months. And President Kaunda called a press conference and produced this fellow and says, addressing the nation, that here is this young fellow from New Zealand. He came to Zambia to do this terrible thing. Fortunately, our police caught him. He's been convicted, as you know. But New Zealand is with us in the struggle against apartheid. His prime minister is with us in the struggle against apartheid. And this young fellow has come here to embarrass the people of New Zealand. And because we are close to the people of New Zealand, I decided that we must release him. But, you know, that was President Kaunda. He just couldn't stand this, the embarrassment of this ally of ours across the oceans in New Zealand, that he was embarrassed by this silly fellow who had come to do this terrible thing there. But that was President Kaunda. I'm saying he was a very humane person, with a soft heart, and a person's person. And that's why it was easy for him to communicate with people right around the continent, including ourselves.
How was he beyond our continent? One remembers and sees images of him in the Commonwealth with the Queen, but he met and dealt with heads of state from the rest of the world as well.
Because he was very principled, President Kaunda. In that sense, therefore very courageous. He didn't watch which way the wind was blowing in order to state whatever the positions were. It didn't matter who it was, Maggie Thatcher and all these people. He stated positions very clearly as what needed to be done in order to make sure that our continent was liberated, including South Africa. And I'm saying very, very principled, very courageous, and you couldn't. He was not a person who went according to the way the wind blew. And I think that therefore he, a man of integrity. You know, even when he lost the elections, there were tensions between himself and the President Chiluba and the governing party then, to such an extent that they actually they requested the British Scotland Yard to send a team of police investigators, because they were alleging that President Kaunda had accumulated lots of money during all of these years that he was president of Zambia. Nobody believed them. We didn't believe them. Nobody else believed them, because the whole continent, the whole world knew that this was a person of integrity. The British police came, did whatever investigations, and reported to President Chiluba that this man didn't steal a single cent. I'm saying that this kind of integrity had earned him the respect that he had, not only within our continent, but across the world. Because, as I was saying, once he raised a point with whoever it was, in the rest of the world, to say this is where we stand, everybody would know that that's an honest position. It's not time-serving. It's not for ulterior purposes or hidden purposes. It was for the reasons that President Kaunda would advance, and therefore a man of integrity, and then really accepted globally as this African who could indeed speak with the concerns and interests of the Africans as a whole. And everybody would accept that that is the opinion of the continent.
And I suppose as we start to try and wrap up this conversation, his legacy, what one thing do you think that we should remember him most for?
I think, Peter, what we should remember the KK for, most for, not only remember him, but also to see what we can do to follow in those footsteps, is that President Kaunda understood very, very well the challenges the continent faced, whether it's challenges of liberation, challenges of development, even the challenges of democratization, understood those very well. And understood that we as Africans needed to act consistently in a principled manner to address all of those things. So I'm saying, therefore, truly an African, the kind of African leader that we need. So I'm quite sure that he will be remembered across the continent in those broad terms. Apart from the contribution he made very directly in terms of the liberation of the continent, he would also be understood in those global terms. And I think the example he set, it's an example that we need to communicate to the whole continent all the time, so that we inspire a generation that which will want to walk in the steps of somebody as excellent as was President Kaunda.
And you talk about contributions, and I've got to remember that even after he came out of office, he spent the next decades of his life of service to people, getting involved in a lot of charity work, but also as an elder, advising when called upon and where he could.
Oh, absolutely, yes. I mean, he, in that sense, he never retired. He never retired in terms of being of service, in terms of pursuing all of these various objectives. When we had these problems, challenges in Zimbabwe, he was always there to help resolve these problems. These issues of AIDS came up. He was very active on that matter. So President Kaunda, in that sense, never retired. So because all of these things were within his heart, they were not a politician's agenda, that you have to address this thing because you are a politician, you want to be loved and popular and elected and all that, but it's because they were really part of it, an integral part of the formation of this personality called President Kaunda. And indeed, so I think in that sense, he passed away. He's missing. He went missing by passing away while continuing to be in action.
And perhaps finally, on a personal note, it's your birthday tomorrow. Congratulations. Will you be doing anything special?
No, thanks a lot, Peter. No, unfortunately, nothing special, because we are listening very carefully to what the government is saying about the COVID-19 things. So the way people are suggesting that maybe we could have a dinner or something, but unfortunately we can't proceed with it. given the current situation, particularly in the light of this third wave. But thank you very much for the best wishes. You can still send me a cake. That would be in order.
We'll definitely do that. Mr. President, thank you very, very much indeed for joining us and sharing those valuable thoughts on the late President. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, Peter.
Thank you. All right, that's former President of South Africa, Thabo Mbeki, speaking about Dr. Kenneth Kaunda.